Hi folks, welcome back to Tiny on Tour. A few weeks ago, I put up a video about installing a separating toilet into the caravan. And as you all know, the caravan I have has a combination toilet where the shower and toilet are in the same area. So it was a little bit involved, but I'm glad to say that the install went really well. And now that we've had an opportunity to use it for 2 months, I'm ready to give some feedback on the unit. As you all know, the unit is a Joolca got to go. Now, this is a separating toilet. I won't say it's a composting toilet simply because the contents in it don't stay there long enough for it to turn into compost. But I wanted to try and find a toilet which would be easier to empty, but I really wanted to find a toilet which would give me a longer interval between having to empty it. This particular unit will last us approximately 8 to 10 days depending on the usage. Compared to the cassette toilet where we had to empty it every 2 to 3 days. And that wasn't always convenient, especially when we were off grid. Now that we've had an opportunity to use the Got to Go for a couple of months, I think we are in the position to give you some feedback on how it performed. I've got to say that on the whole, I think that this is a really, really good unit. The lid opens and you've got to have a little bit of a gap between the caravan wall and the unit itself so that the lid can go back far enough and it doesn't drop forward. However, there are a couple of things that I think can be improved. One of them is to remove the containers for the number one and number twos on the inside. You've got to open the entire top unit, and this is the hinge line, which means that if you try and open it in this position, the unit hits the back wall and you can't remove the container. So you've got to move the container forward. And I think that the space that Joolca recommends is that you need to have, I think, 63 or 64 centimeters from the back wall for you to be able to open the unit. Now, once you open the unit, it's easy. You can just go ahead and pull out the containers, and these come out really, really well. The unit that I have is the one with the newer urine bottle cap that has the higher lip in it. And what I will suggest is when you go ahead and put the cap on, that you hand tighten it until it stops, but don't force it down any tighter. That way, when you go ahead and close the lid, it seals against the O-ring on the top. And that way you won't get any leaks at all. It also has an indicator. I find that when the needle moves and just touches the red, there is about 4 or 4.5 liters in there. So my suggestion is the moment it starts getting into there, it's time to start emptying it. You've only got about 1.5 liters to go before you start to overflow the container. I do recommend that when it hits the red and it has about 4 to 4.5 liters in it, to go ahead and remove the container and empty it. The reason is because if you have to move the unit forward to be able to open the top, sometimes when you're moving the unit, you jerk it, and if it's too full, that's where you'll get a spill. So don't wait till it's all the way to the top before you remove it. Removing it is easy. All you got to do is to pull it out and empty it. The second thing about the Joolca got to go, which I wish was designed differently, was that the container for the number ones was a little bit larger. We find that we have to empty it every night before going to bed. Otherwise, we would be able to fill it up by the time we do the morning wee. So a larger container would really, really help. The other thing is, when it comes to emptying it, there is no breather hole, so it sloshes a little bit or it gurgles a little bit when you pour it out. So the pouring out process is very slow. You got to do it a little bit at a time to be able to let air get in without causing it to gurgle so that you can get a smooth pour. But then it takes quite a while to do so. The third item that I wish was designed differently is that I wish the unit had a venting system. The Joolca Gotta Go does not come with a venting system, so I've decided to add one. I've got a venting fitting and drilled a hole so that I could put it in, and I've placed it directly over the opening. So I use this toilet slightly differently from what the designer intended. When we are at camp and not moving, because I've got the unit vented, I actually leave the slide open to help reduce condensation. And what happens is the exhaust fan draws all the moisture out of it. And that way, the unit itself now becomes a vented unit. Yes, unfortunately, having the vent on the top doesn't look fancy at all. You know, it looks like an afterthought, but it is an afterthought. You know, this is something that I've added on my own. However, because the vent empties from the top unit, it not only reduces condensation from the number two's container, it also reduces any condensation from the number one container. So the unit itself has stayed extremely dry. I have not had any issues with condensation built up in the unit or in the back of the seat. I read that you could use rabbit litter. Basically, that's just wood shavings. And you get a small bag for about $15. And this is what it looks like. Basically, it is pine wood shavings that's not treated at all. And we first started using this, but I found that it wasn't very effective for reducing smells unless you used a lot. And the problem is, if you use a lot of it, then what happens is you have to empty the cassette a little faster. So the next thing we tried were the coil peat bricks from Bunnings, and basically this is a coconut coil that has been compressed, and all you have to do, you buy one block of it. I think it is 5 or 6 something, I can't remember exactly, and you can divide this into 4, and I find that a quarter of the brick is sufficient for me to use as the initial media and as the topping up media every time we use it until we are ready to empty the cassette. And usually we still have a little bit left over. A lot of the information that I found online was basically more for the composting toilets with the agitators. And they always tell you, you want to add water, break up the coil peat bricks until it's all loose and that it is still damp. We tried that initially, and I must admit I didn't quite like the result. So what I did was I made the mix a little drier. Right. So I go ahead and break it up, add water to it, and then when it's all damp, I break it up finer so that I can get this kind of consistency. There are no lumps in it whatsoever. This is not wet or moist in any way. What I do is after I mix it up, I leave it in the bucket to let it dry out, and I stir it every now and then. And you can start using it already as it is. But I find that the drier it becomes in its loose form, the more effective it is, because that helps absorb all the moisture. And when I go ahead and have it in this form and it absorbs the moistures from the solids, what happens is I get a lot less condensation in the container and in the toilet itself. And that makes a massive difference to the smell. So let's talk about the bags that we use for the solids container. You can get these in just about any camping shop. They come basically in a bag of 3. These are designed to work with the standard 5-gallon pail that a lot of campers will use as a toilet when they're off-grid. Now, we went ahead and bought a pack of that. And after the first use, it became very apparent that this bag for the 5-gallon pail is just a little too small. Because what happens is, when you have it all together and the solids container fills up, when you try and lift the bag to twist it, just about here, the bag pulls off the ring, and then you're left with a bag that's not sealed. And I've got to tell you, it's no fun having to deal with an unsealed bag of poo. What I prefer to do is I use the larger garbage bag, and this works basically in the same way. You go ahead, put the ring over the bag, down the sides, tuck it into the Echo container. Once you've got the bag in place, just grab some composting material, put it at the bottom of the bag. All you need is a couple of handfuls. You don't have to empty the whole bucket into it. And then go ahead and seal it up and lock it. The advantage of the big bag is when it comes to emptying and you pull up the lid, you've got enough space to turn the bag to twist it so that you can grab it and have enough slack to tie a knot in it. Now, I know there's a lot of talk on the internet about people emptying composting toilets into bins, and I've got to admit, I wasn't too keen on that either. But when I checked with Waste Management, they said that as long as it's properly bagged, you can put it into any general purpose bin where you would put dog poo or baby diapers. However, when we were on the Ningaloo coast, both the campsites that we were at actually had dump points very close by. So instead of throwing away the solids into a general purpose bin, this is what I did. I got the plastic bag, and before using it, I tied a knot into the bag at the bottom. So this is the top, the opening, and there is a knot at the bottom. So I go ahead and put it into the Echo container, and when we've used it and I've taken it out, taken the whole container down to the dump point, what I do is, instead of tying the knot, I hold it over the dump point, I grab a hold of the knot that's at the bottom, and I just empty everything into the dump point. And once that is done, I basically just wrap up the plastic bag and put it away. This way, it takes a lot less space. And, I'll end up dumping this into a general purpose bin, but at least it's not full of poo after that. Of course, if there is no dump point, you've got pretty much no choice. But if there is, this is what I prefer to do. So, do I like the Joolca Gotta Go unit? I've got to say that I really do. I think some of the advantages of the separating toilet over the cassette toilet is there is a lot less smell. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still a little bit of smell when you are going to use it, but other than that, we don't get any of the odors coming into the van at all. So that's a big plus. Not like the cassette toilets where you do get some smell or a chemical mix smell. The main advantage, however, is that the interval between emptying it is a lot longer than a cassette toilet. A cassette toilet every 2 or 3 days, and with the Gotta Go unit, it is at least 8 to 10 days before we have to empty it. But when it comes to emptying it, if you are off grid and at a dump point with no water, you can't wash out your cassette toilet, and that is really messy. And the odor from that is actually pretty strong. We find with the Gotta Go, if you're using the bags, that it totally eliminates the need to actually wash the container. You can just put a new bag in it, put your compost medium in it, and you're ready to go again. And that's got to be the biggest plus, especially if you like to be off grid. Do I have any regrets putting one in? Not at all. I will say that Donna Marie was very apprehensive at first. She was very worried about the seating position and having the we go in the front and the solids in the back and all. But I think it took her just a couple of uses to get used to the unit. And I did ask her after that, would she go back to a cassette toilet? And she said, definitely not. This is the way to go. Now, the Gotta Go is a very basic unit. No agitator in there. It's not as large as some of the units that are out there, which from what I hear have intervals of 5 to 8 weeks before you have to empty it. But for what I paid for it, I think I paid 300 something dollars for it versus having to pay 2,000 over dollars for one of the fancy units. I'm quite happy to stick to this one. In my opinion, I think it's money well spent. Really, really good value. And I'm so glad I've made the effort to do the conversion. I hope this has helped you guys. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a message on Tiny on Tour on Facebook or leave a message in the comments. Cheers. See you, folks.